too quick. Are we ready? Ms. Lloyd, are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If everybody's ready to go, I'll call the Monday, January 27th, 2014 meeting of the Pittsboro Board of Commissioners to order and ask for we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. And Commissioner Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sir, would everybody rise and remove their hats for the pledge? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
First item of business is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have approval of, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of minutes. We have item number 2 is a budget amendment for unemployment charges, and that's due to new statutory requirement. Number 3 is a budget amendment ordinance for the general fund relating to administrative support funds. Comes out of an audit finding that we need to charge salaries that are split between two funds differently than we've been doing. And number 4 is an ordinance amending the budget for recreation fee in lieu of dedicated park space, and that's also an offshoot of the recent audit asking that we account for those funds in a specific earmarked account. Do you have any comments on any of the consent agenda items you wish to discuss or pull any of those?
We just make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the noted corrections before us to the minutes, I think, of December 9th, and the work session on December 19th, and our last meeting, January 13th.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda passes unanimously. Let's see here. Next, we'll go to citizen matters. We have 2. I'm sorry. Thank you. Do you need a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved as presented. And now we'll go into citizen matters. We have 2 public expression speakers signed up. First is I believe it's Esther Cohen.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Esther Cohen, Chair of the Chatham County Ag Advisory Board. I reside on Van Thomas Road in Pittsboro. I am here once again to address the potential impact of the Chatham Park development on our shared water resources and its impact on agriculture. In 2013, the Chatham County Board of Commissioners voted unanimously to approve targeted employment and farmland preservation as the long-term directional planning strategy for the county. There is a reason that the county commissioners voted to preserve our farmland. We provide food, locally, regionally, nationally. We are a significant economic presence. For agriculture to survive, we need our underground water resources. Agriculture needs water, our communities need water. A large number of Chatham County homes and businesses rely on wells. To ignore the possibility of putting any of this in jeopardy without the appropriate impact studies being done before the plan, as it is presently written, is accepted cannot be justified. The impact that Chatham Park will have on our shared underground water resources is simply not addressed in the Chatham Park Master Plan, and I do not see how we can go forward without concrete information. Page 13 of the plan tells us that there will be water towers, and the map shows us that there will be at least 2 of them. It does not say how large they will be or where the water will be coming from. It does state, however, that the town of Pittsboro will be responsible for providing that 4.4 million gallons per day of drinkable water. The master plan projects an additional 2 million gallons per day for non-potable uses. We would like to ensure that our underground water resources will not be tapped for this. Simply put, no wells. And if you are looking at wells to supply any portion of the needs of Chatham Park, that nothing be considered without those impact studies being done first. Do not forget that the 70% impervious surfaces on a 7,200 acre development will, in itself, significantly divert an awful lot of rainfall from its usual path. Take a look at page 18 of the plan, where stormwater controls are discussed. You can picture that the rainfall, which now falls evenly on 7,200 acres, finding its way down to wherever it's been going, will now be collected and go, I don't know where, but you should. And you should at least be asking those questions before approving this master plan. Thank you for your consideration. Respectfully, Esther Cohen, Chair, Chatham County Ag Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Next speaker is Dr. Franz Verhagen.
Mr. Mayor and commissioners, I'm a recently arrival in Chatham County from New York City, and as a concerned citizen I started learning about Chatham Park, and I had a question and a recommendation. And the question really deals with the process that has been engaged in making the decision. And I know basically the final decision rests with you, but I think in order for the community to be engaged and to support whatever the outcome may be, it's very important to have a proper process and basically develop a proper public engagement process strategy. I'm a sustainability sociologist who has been studying and teaching about sustainable communities. And so I'm very much interested in seeing that this project or this program, this massive program, is going to be implemented in a way that is both socially, ecologically and economically feasible and attractive to the whole population, not only of Pittsboro but of the county, because so far as I can see it's a real large program that will impact on the life of most people in the county. And so one of the recommendations that I would like to make is that the commissioners, that the mayor and the commissioners consider hiring a consultant to be engaged in this public engagement process consulting, so that a proper strategy can be drawn up. Because if that does not happen, there may be, though the possibilities of Chatham Park may be really very interesting and very important in many respects. But if it is not done properly and the proper process being involved, then it may be an issue of great dissent among the citizens in Pittsboro and even for the citizens in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I should have asked you at the beginning to state your name and address for the record, please. So
my name is Frans Verhagen, and I commend the mayor for pronouncing my name correctly.
Thank you.
He belongs to the 5% of the population who does this correctly. And I'm located at 321 Carolina Meadows.
Thank you, sir. I have no other people signed up for public expression. Did anybody miss the opportunity to sign up? If not, we'll move on to old business. Our first item of business is ABC operations report for the second quarter from Mr. Jim Nass.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. On behalf of my other board member, Ned Kelly, who isn't here, and Nancy Gooch, our GM, and Faye Ward, our finance officer and staff, I want to present our half-year report. We're 6 months into finished 6 months into our fiscal year, and it's a good opportunity to bring you up to date on where we stand. Financially, we're doing quite well. We are 18% above same period last year in pre-liquor tax revenues and 16% over in after liquor tax revenues. So we're about $100,000 over where we were last year at the 6-month mark, and we believe that will continue throughout the remainder of this year. I think that I ought to tell you that we have paid so far this year $168,553 in taxes. That's liquor taxes, excise taxes, and general taxes that accrue to the state government. Our operating expenses are actually down 12% over the 6 months of last year, which means that our staff is operating much more efficiently, even though they're selling more product. And we actually have, in fact, during the holidays, increased our hours just a little bit, which paid off. But still, we've been able to cut our operating expenses by $10,000 over same period last year. Our distributions to the town so far this year, including what I'll be presenting tonight, are $43,839, which is considerably over where we were at this point last year. But you do have to remember that fourth quarter really gets distributed, last year gets distributed in first quarter. So it catches up over the years, but that $43,859 also includes the special $25,000 distribution we made at the end of the first quarter. Our financial accounts are in good order. We still have, even though we, as you know, did a major remodel of the sales floor last year and are doing support area remodeling this year, just about done with that, we still have not touched our savings account of $64,000. So we're proud of being able to finance those rehabilitation issues out of current operating expenses, rather than dipping into our account, which is really there to help us prepare for some kind of an emergency, obviously, but more importantly, to help us prepare for, as Pittsboro grows and as it becomes necessary to think about an additional store, that there's money there to do that without having to borrow. We would like to be able to finance that out of cash if possible. From an operating point of view, we have just finished replacing the last of the galvanized plumbing from the parking lot into the building and then from within the building. That old galvanized plumbing was very, very fragile, and we kept really thanking our stars on a day-to-day basis that we did not have a leak before we could manage to get that repaired. So that is done, and for the first time we even have a water shut-off valve inside the building in case of an emergency. So we're very happy that we were able to get that done. As I mentioned, we're continuing to monitor what's going on in and around Pittsboro to try to be prepared. for what might be necessary as we think about serving customers in the next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. Last year was the first year we lived with our new landscaping arrangement, and we think that went well, although we did have some issues with a few of the plantings. The ABC board continues to believe that that landscaping and the appearance of the exterior of that building is very, very important to the people that shop there and to the people that visit or transit through Pittsboro, especially if they enter the town from the south. Having that attractive exterior, I think, fits in with small town Main Street program and really provides a view of the town that says, these people care about their buildings and they care about what they're doing. So we are revisiting how we did last year. We're going to remove some plants, we're going to put in some new kind of stuff, and we're thinking through a better alternative for the day-to-day maintenance of those landscapes so that they stay healthy and in good shape all season long. Now, the second quarter distribution checks for the town will total $10,795, and I'm going to be pleased to present those checks to the mayor. If there's any feedback ever from the commissioners or the mayor, we on the board would be very pleased to hear it at any time. And certainly if there's any questions this evening, I'd be more than happy to try and answer them.
I just have a comment. I drove by there today and the window mural, whatever it is, that looks fantastic. It's very eye-catching and it looks really nice.
Thank you. We struggled with what to do there. I think you probably saw it when we had those kind of drapes in there that didn't look very, very good. And so we thought if we could get something in there that allows you to, at night you can see in, but during the day you can't, but we can see out. And the other thing that liquor, particularly brown liquor, turns out the sun, or white liquor, the sun turns it. And so if we don't have something there to protect, the vodkas and the gins and that sort of thing turn brown, which means that you're not going to be able to sell them. But thank you, yeah.
I have a comment too that I went in the store right before the holidays and thought it was great how you had a section just of local beer, local distilleries and things. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, we try to promote the North Carolina beverage industry and that is growing by leaps and bounds. I think a new distillery just opened within the last month in Durham again. And so we're trying to keep up with the local.
Got one coming up in Pittsboro too.
That's right, exactly, yes.
Well, my only comment is I'd like to thank Mr. Nass and his fellow board members for their great success over the last year and a half or two. For those who don't know, most of the board members know, but our ABC store had been under fire, and we came really close to losing it a couple of times over the last 5 or 6 years. And the turnaround is dramatic and much appreciated by the board. Thank you, sir.
I'll pass that on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I want to present the checks to you. The town can find good use for those, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item of business is the Cornwallis Commons Pocket Subdivision. Mr. Bass will introduce that.
Yes, sir. This is subdivision 2002-02, and it's the Pocket neighborhood, which is essentially a clustered group of homes around some sort of shared open space. And this was based on an amendment provided by the applicant, which was approved in June of 2012. And at that time, as part of the application process, the original concept plan for this particular development was presented and discussed. November 13, 2012, the town board approved a request for wastewater allocation on this particular project. And at the time, it was broken down into 4 4-bedroom homes and 6 3-bedroom homes for 4,080 gallons of wastewater per day. The plans have been reviewed by hydrostructures and also the fire marshal, fire chief, town engineer, and utilities director. Revisions were made based on the comments provided. Layout shown in plan improvements are acceptable. The proposal meets the terms of the Pocket neighborhood ordinance. Staff recommendation is for approval. The Town Planning Board recommended approval on January 6, 2014. You have in your packet a description provided by the applicant, and as well as memos from Town Engineer Fred Worrell, Utilities Director John Boutique, and as well as Hydro Structures. The utilities memo makes reference to a manhole, a technical detail which has since been revised and changed. And the applicant, project engineer, are also here tonight to answer any questions the board might have.
I would just like to say one thing. I did talk to the fire chief earlier today because I was concerned about the distance from the parking to the back areas. And I understand you guys are sprinkling those homes, and that's wonderful. And a comment to you that I understand that you guys have been very good working with. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, we've had a lot of, I guess, table time around this project because it is so unique and different.
That answers one of my questions. Was if I read the plan correctly, I saw there was only one fire hydrant serving the whole community, and I guess if it's sprinklered, that's probably not a problem.
Yeah, I think there's one at the end of Cornwallis, here, and then there'll be an additional one. Where are we at? Over here?
Yeah, that's the one I noted, and that was the only one I could find on there. But if they're sprinklered units, that's not a concern though. I guess the only other concern I had was, and it's been known since we first discussed this, is the proximity to our wastewater treatment plant. And I would just, I like this project. I think that the other board members like it as well. But I hope in the marketing of the homes that you provide full disclosure to potential buyers that you are, I don't know whether it's 150 yards or 200 yards from a wastewater treatment plant, and that's going to be part of their life, and there will be days when they notice it's over there.
It is close. One thing that I hope to do to kind of mitigate that, and I'll talk with John Poteet and Randy Hurd and also with Fred Royal about possibly replacing the existing chain link fence on the town's side of the creek with a solid sound wall, and also doing some additional landscaping there so that
Any measures that can be taken are appreciated, but what I really don't want to have happen is a buyer purchase a house and call Mr. Gruspek and complain that they didn't know there was a wastewater treatment plant next door.
well, this time of year it's hard to miss.
Yeah. That's the only comment I have.
It's a very exciting project. I'm happy to see you all moving forward.
Well, I think what Mr. Terry is, or Mayor Terry is also referring to is it'll probably be hard to miss in the summer as well. But a whole different sensory system will kick in at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's a real common concern. I will say I have residents out there now that are not bothered, and I have not heard a single complaint about it, but it depends on the buyer.
I make a motion that we approve the Cornwallis Pocket subdivision.
I do have a couple of comments that I'd like to get out there, if I can, and I can be happy to do that after it gets seconded.
Second.
I really like this project, and I look forward to seeing it happen. As I was joking with the developer out in the hallway, that I thought this had the opportunity to be a very expensive project to build. There's a lot of topography, and I think things you've done to overcome the grade changes out there really have great possibilities for a really stunning and beautiful place. So I think it's going to be very nice to see. Some of my questions are of a technical nature, and I'll save the one I have really tough time with for last. So this question could be for our engineer, Mr. Royal. I know there's some filling happening in the floodway. Is there floodplain? any additional permitting required for that filling?
We're required to confirm any fill in the floodplain, which is allowed by FEMA, but not necessarily by the town because of the no rise indication. That they're meeting the standard of whatever you bring in, you have to take out, kind of a balance, earthwork balance. So that's what they've done.
Okay.
Between the level spreader, that'll be a cut area, and the fills over there where the retaining wall is.
Yep.
On the top side there, so.
So this is going to achieve that balance.
Plus,
It's a volumetric swamp that actually is making the floodway have more volume. So in essence, it would technically lower the floodway elevation.
Okay, okay, good. Out of BMP number 3, I think BMP, the other BMPs, I guess it's just 1 and 2, go to a level spreader, but then BMP 3 just discharges straight to the buffer. And is this project subject to the new Jordan rules that we adopted? Therefore, the diffuse flow is not a requirement. Is that correct?
I'll take this one if you want. I'm Landon Lovelace, I'm the design engineer. BMP 1, 2, and everything from the parking lot go to the level spreader. And part of that is just because of the layout of the stormwater. BMP 3 actually does have diffuse flow. A dissipator is diffuse flow, even though it doesn't go through a level spreader. So there's a riprap dissipator there that does provide diffuse flow.
I'm not familiar with Diener recognizing riprap apron as diffuse flow.
it's not, if it was a deformed scour hole, which is a flared-in section with a concave bottom, it does, because it's designed by 3 different locations, 3 different directions. This is standard flared-in section.
It is, it's the type of dissipator, yeah.
Well, and the point really is that I don't think you're subject to a diffuse flow requirement on this project, so I commend you for doing it at BMP number 4. If you could modify the flared in and riprap section to the preformed scour hole that Mr. Royal's talking about, then I think that would be better if you can do that, because that will provide some diffuse flow.
We can, and part of the reason why we used a dissipator there is if you look at the location of BMP3 and where the outfall is, it's in a pretty deep existing draw.
Yeah.
So trying to get anything flat there, imagine you're in the bottom of a pretty deep draw.
Right.
Trying to get something flat there is.
I understand, so I think it's the
We
excavation
can
will probably
certainly
do the
do a
trick.
scour hole.
Okay. Where would the accessible parking be should a homeowner have that requirement? Because I noticed the slopes on the parking lots are pretty steep. And you got 8% on one side and like 4.5% on the other.
So, to my understanding, since there are private, fee simple lots for sale, none is required. So there are 2 spaces that are right next to the aisleway that are not 2%, but are less than 5%.
Yeah.
Which you're allowed for up to, I don't know, off the top of my head, I think it's 100 feet, 120 feet before you have a flat landing. So, again, we worked with the topo as best we could to make it as flat as possible, even providing the first iteration of the plan actually had 2 staircases coming down to the center courtyard, but at significant expense, we talked through using that ramp system, keeping a staircase but also using the ramp. So if there were folks that needed accessible access, they had some manner to get down there without a staircase.
Well, if there's anything you can do to flatten out some of those parking spaces, because I think the standard is 2% for the parking spaces themselves, so if there's any way to pull that off, I know it's not a requirement, but it could be a future need for a resident. The other questions I have to do with this shared easement, this sewer and power utility easement. Has the power company agreed to this arrangement? And if so, can you provide documentation of that? And two, even if they have, I question whether the town really wants to do this. Whether or not we want to have a sewer easement wherein another utility might come in and bore a hole straight through our sewer pipe. And when I looked at the plans, the overhead line measures about 5 feet of separation from that proposed sewer line. And I question our desire to maintain a system that has that at risk. And I would ask Mr. Messick if in fact we have any other sewer easements where we allow other public utilities or private utilities to run within and parallel with the easement and not just crossing. Crossings are typical, but to run in the same easement, it is just a conflict of needs there. We need to have full control of that easement to maintain that system. And quite frankly, I expect they want the same to maintain their system. And I have a big concern about both of these coexisting in the same footprint, and the need for backhoes and excavators to get out there and be cognizant of the other utility. And ours is going to be hard to remember because you're not going to see it. It's underground. So I question whether this town wants that easement situation to occur. And with that, it wouldn't just bring up a problem without a possible solution. But it seemed that the sewer line could shift probably about 30 feet downstream and possibly still come up and join on to the line you've got running in a northeasterly direction.
Okay. Yep. Couple of things. Duke Power has given us permission to do that. I haven't received an official letter from them, but I have emails that I can provide to you that would substantiate that. They also require some distance, and that would be 10 feet from their pole, which I think we just haven't updated the plans to reflect that.
The existing utility poles shown in there, the poles that are coming down the side will be relocated. Right now they come across the middle of the site.
Right.
So those pole locations are not set yet. But if you look at the utility plan, there's a specific note on there that says the minimum 10-foot separation shall be maintained from the new power poles. With respect to multiple utilities in the same corridor, it happens all the time, especially in urban areas. Having 10 feet separation is a luxury. That's supported in rural areas, but all those poles are overhead, and while the poles certainly have significant foundation systems, there's not really anything underground. So I think Progress has set their 10-foot horizontal separation based off of experience. And we certainly try to, we've got room within the easement to try to shift as far away from the power line as we can. I think you kind of balance the fact that we're right down on Robeson Creek watershed, and there's an existing corridor that's already cleared and cut through those power lines, trying to stay within that and not take down more existing vegetation or have disturbance outside an area that's ecologically sensitive. So that was kind of the original thought behind placing it in the same easement as power, overhead power. And we are maintaining at least the required separation that Duke Progress sets forth.
Yeah, well, I can appreciate the idea that in an urbanized setting that these utilities will be close together, and I imagine that's probably making reference to a public right-of-way. But I think in this, which would clearly be an outfall where it is more rural, if you will, that it can be, I think it can be avoided, that I think we would So I don't know, Mr. Messick, if you could weigh in on the idea of this shared easement. One, us, I'm assuming we're going to dedicate, or we're going to request that the easement be dedicated such that it provides us the rights we need to maintain it.
Sure, but it's not exclusive, and neither is the Duke Energy easement exclusive. So it can be used for anything the property owner wants to do, as long as it's not inconsistent or unreasonable to the use that's been allowed. This is an overhead line, it's not an underground line. They have to get a new easement to put anything other than an overhead in. So if the town's already got a sewer line in there, then I don't expect that that's going to be unless they have whatever separation they're going to require there. So, I mean, it's theoretically possible that you could have some conflict between a power pole and a sewer line, but I don't see that it necessarily is a problem.
It's not the most efficient way to do it, I mean, share the easement.
What's the question? Is that the most efficient way to do it?
It seems to me like that would be the most efficient way.
And I think one other thing to look at in this case, and I don't know if you're that forward to the plan profile for the sewer outfall. Now, this sewer, we're not talking about deep sewer at all. It's tied to the existing outfall. We're basically making a minimum cover all the way through. So you're looking at sewer that's 4 or 5 feet deep. So that's not a very wide corridor that's needed to get down to a sewer that's only 4 or 5 feet deep. We're not talking about an outfall that's 20 feet deep that requires a trench that's laid back and some enormous excavations around.
Right.
It's quite shallow.
How tall are those, or how high are the power lines?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even.
I'm just concerned about our guys digging.
Digging underneath.
Yeah. And forgetting that there's a power line above their head.
I agree. And I can completely see that point. If you look out in East Cornwallis Road, there's power lines that go over the head of the sewer manhole right below it as well. So, I mean, I think it's, obviously anytime you're doing any work around overhead power lines, whoever's doing the work needs to be cognizant of the surroundings. And I'm not against, I think it's a very good idea to get as much separation as we possibly can in that easement, but I do think it would be a mistake to go outside that easement.
Well, I expect that the plan is going to get approval this evening, and you'll come back with staff to do construction drawings and permitting. And if you would look at that and reassess it and see if it's a feasible option for you, I think if we can avoid the joint easement, it would be cleaner and better off, because it'll be 10, 15 years from now, and none of us will probably be involved. So they won't be able to say, don't forget, there's a sewer line over there.
Maybe the solution would be to mark the sewer, where the sewer lines are in some way.
They're very clearly marked, because the manholes are
Right.
sticking up from the ground.
So it's not really going to be a problem. So we don't have to worry about them being, forgetting where they are, if they're going to be visible.
Any other comments from board members? No, we have a motion seconded to approve this subdivision proposal. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll see you in the next phase. Item number 3 is interlocal agreement with Chatham County for soil erosion and sedimentation. Is Mr. Royal going to present?
I can just set it up real quick
Okay.
and then turn it over. Back in October, staff presented a soil erosion control program and a draft interlocal agreement between Pittsboro, the town, and Chatham County. I believe the board reviewed it at that point. Town staff, town attorney, and county staff subsequently reviewed the attached agreement. I think we have language that's been finalized with the end result being to use Chatham County soil erosion and sedimentation control ordinance. It also formalizes building code enforcement as well as fire protection within as well. Mr. Royal has additional comments about County, at which point we would forward the document to the Chatham County Board of Commissioners for their review.
Just to follow up, this has been looked at for several years, and so it's we believe it's a good time to do this with the onset of new development and the fact that Chatham County has an excellent local sedimentation erosion control program with 2 full-time staff. So the biggest benefit that the town would receive would be service to the developer and the contractor and the citizens. Whenever they can enter a job site any day of the week and work with the contractor for dealing with problems that we've seen recently in some projects that could be offset, it saves everyone time and money, and it keeps sediment from entering streams. So that's the kind of the whole intent of this program. So the question is, how can the county do all this legally? Well, the interlocal agreement would take care of that. And the Chatham County ordinance is specific for Chatham County, not Pittsboro. So there's a clause in the interlocal agreement that describes if there's any kind of legal matter associated with a penalty or a violation or whatever, then the town would take that, the town board of commissioners would take up any type of grievance or any type of action that's required by the ordinance, so to separate that from Chatham County Board of Commissioners. So the county staff and I have been working together on this, and they're all seemingly excited and willing. Participants, all the funding would be as is and go to the county, as if they're doing it with the county, so the town wouldn't have to worry about handling money, which would be good. So it's kind of a nice pass-through method. It does have to go to the County Board of Commissioners for their approval, and from there, if it's approved, it would go to the state of North Carolina DENR and the Sedimentation Control Commission for their approval. And I think eventually to the Environmental Management Commission for their approval. So it's a local delegation issue. So Pittsboro would go from the state of North Carolina being our jurisdiction to Chatham County. That might take 4 or 5 months. It depends on getting on all the schedules and that sort of thing, in Raleigh especially.
Can I ask Fred a question?
Sure.
If, once that goes to the state for their review and hopefully their approval, then at what point would we be able to actually use the ordinance for purposes locally?
That might be a Mr. Messick question, but I believe it'd be as soon as the Environmental Management Commission signs off on it, then it could go into effect. It might also depend on what Chatham County's resolution, if they have one, would say. And I don't know if they're going to decide on a resolution or just a clean vote. I'm not sure. So with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to take.
Fred, you said that the fees would go straight to the county. Is there a possibility that the county would be sending us back a charge or a fee? Or is that just going to cover it completely?
That would cover it completely.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got it all set up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Mr. Ward.
Mm-hmm.
On number 11, it indicates the town shall pay for all costs. What type of particular costs are they referring to there?
I'm sorry, what does number 11 say?
Financing. The town shall pay for all costs it incurs under this agreement, and in addition, shall pay for county such fees, costs, and charges for inspections or permits required.
Okay, I apologize, but I haven't read that
Oh,
today.
okay.
But the way it's supposed to work is all fees, charges, and costs are paid from the applicant to the county, like just like for any kind of permit application. That's the way it's supposed to set up. And I apologize, I didn't read that and understand what you're asking, but the way we have it right now with the county is there's no fees, charges, or anything that the county or the town will pay to the county.
Well, and I think that sentence is referring to town-owned properties or facilities. So if the town were acting as the developer,
Okay.
Okay.
then
That's correct. We build a new building and it requires building inspection and permitting under this, then we would be the client of the county and pay fees like anybody else.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll follow up on Commissioner Farrell's comment because I had the same comment based on representations that have been made to me that the county's program through its fees is self-sustaining and therefore it's unlikely.
I don't think that's correct. I mean, I've heard that, but it's not correct.
Well, I'm basing a lot of what I'm doing on the idea that these fees are covering it, and in fact, they won't be coming back to us for additional funding for
This
expenses.
agreement says the only time the town has to pay anything is in terms of enforcement. And that would depend on what you go inside.
Yeah, there was a,
But then it talks about the number of three that they're going to do the enforcement. The county shall enforce.
well, and I think what Mr. Messick is referring to is
Under
after the fact.
After the fact, legal fees or
Yeah.
whatever.
Mhm. And that seems reasonable to me, assuming that we agree that it's worth defending. So,
Yeah, the Board of Commissioners could decide.
this is not a
This
fight
is-
we want to fight.
yeah.
So, but I did have a question, were there any other expenditures that the county would anticipate that we would contribute? If in fact we understand that the program as at present, the fees pay for those 2 staff members to do the inspections, do the plan review, do all that stuff, and that by taking on Pittsboro, that will remain the same. Because if not, then I'd like to better understand what likely expenditures would be expected of the county.
Right.
I'm not aware of any expenditures that the town would be expected to contribute other than in terms of an enforcement action.
Okay.
And it's very similar to what they already do with the building code and the fire inspection. I mean, they've been doing it for years, and this just sort of puts something in writing to reflect that. But they charge all the fees and pay for all that, so I don't see this as any different from the operations involved.
It's just adds one service that wasn't previously provided.
Well, I guess it also enters the other 2 services into a formalized agreement that heretofore was not formalized.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the interlocal agreement with Chatham County for soil erosion and sedimentation.
Second.
Do we also want to authorize the manager to forward this to the, or is that assumed in your motion?
I just assumed, but
Okay.
We would have to approve the agreement, either or. You might clean it up by just saying and forward to the county board of commissioners for review.
Would you like to amend your
So,
motion?
yes.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Royal, thank you for your work on this. It has been years.
I really want to that.
Yes.
That brings us to new business, number 1 and only, the award of a contract for planning services.
Back in November, the county, or excuse me, at the county on the brain, at the county courthouse, the board of commissioners directed me to develop and release a request for qualifications, find a highly qualified consultant to review the proposed Chatham Park Plan Development District Master Plan and the Plan Development District as identified in the zoning ordinance. On January 3rd, I released an RFQ on the Pittsboro website and the North Carolina Planning Association website, and we have also notified firms that either expressed interest to staff directly or from people in the community that had indicated that firms may be interested in me to carry a recommendation to them. This past January 17th, we received RFQs from 5 firms. We reviewed, scored, and ranked the firms, town planner and myself, with additional input from the town engineer and parks plan. We interviewed the Lawrence Group, and we interviewed one other firm, and ultimately we agreed to forward or invite a fee proposal from the Lawrence Group based on their qualifications and their abilities to understand the issues that were presented by this development and developments of this magnitude. They have a strong background in developing master plans. They can explain UDOs and development agreements quite well, and they have been involved with community design and sizable projects throughout the southeast region. The proposed figure for every deliverable, including the presentation to the town board of commissioners on February 24th, is $12,000. That also includes a report that will be submitted to me on February 14th. And then previous to that, if approved over the next 2 weeks, the consultant would begin reviewing the master plan proposal and plan development district zoning ordinance, and there would be some other meetings that would be associated with those in the first couple of weeks, but probably, to be fair, throughout. I had, with regard to references, had some conversation with Craig Lewis, who's the principal of the Lawrence Group, this past summer. Met with him for a few hours one summer afternoon, and I think we were all, from a staff perspective, we were all pretty impressed. He also came, as I mentioned, recommended highly from one person in the community who represents Pittsboro Matters, and also with regard to his references that he submitted in the RFQ, those references were nearly impeccable as well. So if it is possible, what we're requesting tonight is to authorize the town manager to execute a contract with professional services with the Lawrence Group, planning services associated with proposed Chatham Park Plan Development District Master Plan and Plan Development District zoning ordinance review. One other housekeeping item in front of you, I also placed some red copy which would be appended to the proposed agreement that we received, the proposed contract for services we received in the packet. That appendage just simply adds an additional paragraph 15 under additional standard terms and conditions that specifies mainly payment considerations between the owner and the consultant. That was those suggestions were made initially by the consultant. They've been vetted and approved by the town attorney and the town manager, and also approved by the consultant. Our vetting was also approved by the consultant as well. In your packet, you also have received the RFQ package and the qualifications for the Lawrence Group. So there's a description in there as well as identification near the end of the timeline. With that, I would open for any questions or concerns that you might have.
Does any member of the board have a question for Mr. Brucebeck?
Yes, I would like some clarification just on the RFQ on page 4. Under the services performed, it talks about, this is the guidance that we're giving them, that planning must review and provide detailed written recommendations for marginally improving the document. And I just had a question about that, like marginally would be ideal, but if they do see that we need to make changes, I'd like to see that to me, the priority is to make sure we get a good review as opposed to just not doing it. To me, that seems marginally improving. And then and further down, it talks about the presentation should be brief, concise. I just want to make sure that this is thorough and that we're not overemphasizing get this done fast and keep it short. I just want to make sure that it's thorough.
And I agree, and as we discussed at the last meeting, we were moving forward with the RFQ based on instructions that we received at the time. But I agree, in conversations that we had with consultants, we indicated that we want to make sure that we do this right. And so that will include words and all.
Yeah, I think that's more important than
With regard to the presentation, my only caveat or recommendation on that would be that we want to make sure that we have a limited amount of time in the meeting, so that we weren't necessarily proposing 8-hour production. That it was something a little bit easier to understand. But I will pass along this.
okay, thanks.
Mr. Griesbeck, you mentioned that you had someone from Pittsboro Matters that knew Mr. Lewis. We available to get that person's name out of curiosity?
Yeah, I can grab it for you. It was an email. Actually, it was copied to the rest of the town board.
Okay.
As well.
I have to say, read my email in a few days.
Yeah, the architect for that.
Can I clarify, Pittsboro Matters as a group didn't even see who the applicants were and didn't discuss this. So as an organization, we have made.
I mean, I was just
comments.
curious of the person.
Because I didn't even know until they were vetted what the groups were.
My only point with that was that her name is on the who's who of the Pittsboro Matters website, and she had suggested this as actually the first in line, and I can probably dig that email out here a little bit.
Okay. And regarding the Lawrence Group, this is just a question that I'd like to know. Nobody in our staff has any relationship or have spoken with them other than this Chatham Park. Is that
We
correct?
started meeting with them regarding Chatham Park this past summer. We don't have any business, professional, family, otherwise relationship.
And,
Does this group have any?
what about the relationship with the Lawrence Group to Preston Developers? Are they aware of any relationships or any business that they have done with Preston? Mr. Culpepper could.
We have none,
Okay.
we've done no business with the Lawrence.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now.
I want to ask Mr. Rusbeck if it would be possible, and other board members may be interested in doing this. I have specific questions that I would like to be consulted to answer during the course of their work. I don't have them written out tonight, but I could write them out and get them to you.
Yeah.
And have you forward them to and then if other board members want to do the same,
Right.
and forward them to the consultant via the manager.
That'd be great.
You know, a simple example is, I've got maybe 5 questions, and one of them might be, I might want to hear some discussion about pros and cons around having every use within a PDD be a by right use. I'd like them to talk to us about pros and cons of that. Is that a reasonable thing to do? Are there risks and risk management things we should be concerned about such a broad sweeping authorization? And there may be other questions that board members have going through the PDD ordinance or through the master plan. And,
And that'd be great, and we can work with you in whatever format you'd like to.
yeah, And I think what I would propose is that we do each develop our questions and send them to you via email and copy the other board members. Is that reasonable? Everybody happy with that? Okay. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. The fee for this service is $12,000, and I don't find in the packet any budget amendment. How do we propose to? They do? Okay, so I've missed that.
That would be taken out of our existing line for professional services.
Okay. Okay.
Which we had identified originally as UDO,
So we are taking it out of that line item?
which we'll be spending UDO, we'll be engaging in the UDO process this year. If there's two ways to go about that. We can either go back for an amendment once we know what the UDO costs will be if necessary, or we expend what we have left in the budget for UDO over the course of the remaining fiscal year. But, at least in terms of what we need to do right at the moment, we can afford the $12,000 out of our existing line item for professional services.
And I think historically the board has done that before, where there was a sufficient amount of money in a line item, with the caveat that at the end of the budget year, if things arise, we're spending the money on something we hadn't anticipated at the end of the year, there's a need for an amendment, and bring it back and tell us that.
If you'd like to handle it differently, we can do it.
I think you've got the cash you need in the budget right now.
Well, it points out an issue that we've budgeted so much money for the UDO, but I don't know that we've spent any money towards that goal. And I think we're 7 months into the fiscal year. So I'll leave it at that.
So, Ms. Greensbeck, do you need a motion for authorization?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to execute the contract for professional services for planning services associated with the proposed Chatham Park Plan Development District Master Plan.
Second.
Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rusbeck. Our next item would be the capital projects update.
Thank you once again. I'll try to be brief. The downtown pocket park, recall that we have budgeted monies for design work on a pocket park, and town planner and town attorney are finalizing the description on the property. Having said that, I think we have a pretty good idea. We're comfortable with the dimensions of the area of property that we'll be dealing with. On Hillsborough Street, adjacent to the Bradshaw and Robinson Law Office. The Parks Planner and I will be meeting with Mr. Rob Emerson from Emerson Land Planning this next week to go over possible concepts. Discuss a little bit with the Parks Planner in terms of his connections. I think there's a pretty good fit as far as his relationship with the Main Street program and the work that we're doing in the downtown and the connections with the downtown business owners to make sure that we're incorporating everybody's viewpoint on this downtown space. I've had an initial conversation over the phone with Rob Emerson, and he's excited to get started, and he has some real interesting, I think, good ideas to start off with for us. So we'll keep you posted on that. If anybody has any questions or concerns or suggestions or what have you, please don't hesitate to give me an hour.
Well, let me jump in just because the owner of the property who is gifting the land, Jim Vernon, I think his interests are key to this park, and he is dedicating it or gifting it with the idea that it's formerly a location that his wife, Paige Vernon, used to spend some time in a meditative mode, contemplative mode, if you will, and that we have originally discussed the idea of a passive nature of this area. So I think it's key that his interests remain, I think, in the fore when we think about developing this.
I'd love to see some sort of public art that honors Paige Vernon's work with local families and children. She was always an advocate for children. I'd love to see, it seems like a great spot for some kind of public art that can tie into her gifts to the community. I think that would be great.
Any other questions or comments? And again, if you think of any, let us know. With regard to the Jordan Lake Partnership, the partnership was able to, or I should say the state, was able to extend the deadline. The partnership is, I believe, asking groups, our group as well, to provide an application by, I believe, the end of the month. I have a meeting with the COG managers tomorrow, and we'll get a pretty, I think, in-depth update from the partnership and the groups. Are the groups going to be individually represented at that meeting?
No, it'll be Warren Miller for Foundation Works, and the City of Durham will be there.
So we'll have more on that probably by the next, more description on what direction, more detail on that, but probably the next meeting. Work continues on the generator replacement project. We're still trying to make plans for how the generator will be switched over. The old generator switched off, the new generator comes on. I know there were concerns about how the plant was going to be powered during that switch, and we're trying to work through those right now. Thompson Street and Park Street stormwater improvements, as I updated last week via email, the Thompson Street work is mostly done. I'm not sure if they've completed some riprap that was to be put in the head wall. I think Fred wanted a little bit more the stone work around the head wall. But by and large, what you see is what we have out there to help deal with some of the larger stormwater events that have been hitting that area pretty hard, and I think some of the improvements will pay off. I would caution folks that what we have out there isn't necessarily going to help us in, say, for instance, the 100-year events with, but what will. That said, I think it's going to be a lot more improved from what we had, and there may even, if I understand it right, there may even be times when we do have some ponding. Ponding should dissipate much quicker than it had been before, simply by way of us being able to open up the drainage areas, open up the culvert that goes across Thompson Street, and then dig in some of the swale areas heading on Thompson Street to the east, so that whole area should handle water a bit better. On Park Street, we need to make some improvements up there, and again, weather permitting, we kind of hope to get out there, I think, this week. Anytime it seems like down here that there's a forecast of possible inclement weather, it's call off the dogs, and so I'm not quite sure how much work that we're going to be able to get in out there, but we'll see and keep you posted on that.
Mr. Crudenbeck, you haven't been watching the news, because have you seen all those cars up north in the ditches?
I'm down here. I'm down here.
All right. Glad to have you.
NC 87, we've talked about extending the sidewalk there from West Street south to Pittsboro Elementary School Road. We were able to obtain two different options. We can put this in front of the board for more detailed discussions. Fred has some preliminary drawings that I think probably at the next meeting we should go over and talk about some of these details in a little bit more, with a little bit more time. But really, we're looking at two different estimates. And as we indicated before, an option that would involve curb, a small buffer strip, and then a sidewalk, but would have the advantage of placing the sidewalk closer to the road and further away from the houses, would cost much more than an option which would not use a curb, but the downside being that we would be placing a sidewalk much closer to the houses. And so it's kind of a pick your poison issue. And I think before we get too deep into that and drill too far down, we should probably have some drawings and things. But if you have any comments or questions on that in the meantime, let me know. And then really not much of an update regarding East Street sidewalk and wastewater plant capacity expansion. But we will be continuing to work on those issues as well. So with that, one other, maybe two other items. We had originally, if you recall, back during the budget scheduling, had anticipated a meeting upcoming for this Thursday for capital improvements. I prefer, given, we're actually calling 2 or 3 extra meetings with utilities and wastewater and water treatment right now to sort through some options, some budget options, taking into account the discussion that took place in the strategic planning session. I think before we get too far into board discussions, I'd like to postpone that meeting, and we can probably circle back to that later, and then incorporate maybe some more strategic planning with roles and future activities and things of that nature. But I'd like to have a little bit more internal discussion on some of these other capital issues before we get too far into the higher altitude stuff that you guys are going to be talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, while you're on that subject, I was going to raise the issue with the board and sort of take a straw poll about who might be interested in having Mr. Long come back. And probably, my sense is that probably not useful for him to come back in the middle of the budget process, but maybe in July, as we start the year, and maybe have a shorter session to do the part that we missed of the creating specific action items to move toward the goals that we set. This time it was not that expensive, as I recall. We were to have a 3-hour, 2-hour, 4-hour.
The Saturday session that we had was $975.
Yeah, so if we had a half day sometime, we don't have to agree to it tonight, or certainly not set a date, but offered as a suggestion. After the budget is put to bed, we might want to bring it back.
And then the last thing that I would bring out, and Mandy can answer more specific questions if need be, but just as a heads up, and we may be having to visit this issue in advance of the next fiscal year, and that being replacement computers, running into an Windows XP operating support issue, and a number of our computers at the staff level are becoming kind of obsolete, and so we may have to take a really good hard look at who has computers and the greatest need of replacement. And the worst case scenario is we could be looking at an adjustment in that direction before the end of this fiscal year. So just a heads up about that. We'll do our best to try to minimize that curve. Mandy, do you have anything to add?
I don't at this time, besides the memo that I presented to the board in the packet this time.
I would just mention, I've had a recent experience with this in my office. And for the last 2 weeks, it's been very difficult. And some of the things that I've discovered is that the software packages that you have that run on XP don't run on 7. And there's also new software to be purchased. Unless, of course, you're under some subscription and you've been paying and all that. But that's an issue, and there's also a substantial expenditure on the IT consultant side of things. If you, like me, can't be your own IT department. So think about those things as we're budgeting the idea of additional computers, software, and other consulting services will increase the cost.
Switching your former town manager hat, you recall, did we purchase group licensing for that?
I believe we did. Mr. Horn should probably have the answer to that question, but yeah, I think we do have a group license when you reach a certain threshold, you're supposed to amend the license and pay for more.
Then the only last thing I would point out is that we did include in this packet the summary report for the planning retreat, and that is also online. And it has the quote-unquote raw data as well as how things are shaking out in terms of priorities, at least up to that point. And as Mr. Long mentioned, there still really should be more work on fleshing out some of those issues and turning them into action items. So I think another meeting would be appropriate in the future. I'll see what his availability is and how we might be able to work that. So, and I promise I'm done now.
Quick question, Mandy, do you know how old is the oldest computer that we need to replace? How many years have we had it in service?
That would probably be the computer at the front desk that our person takes payments on. I do not know how old that computer is. I know that my computer is the same one that was purchased from my predecessor, Scott Borer, and that's been some years back.
Okay. The advice I've got in the past from IT folks is that any computer older than 4 years old ought to be replaced, and that's pretty aggressive maybe, but I think we probably have some around that are a lot older than that.
Those are 5 years.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
I think it would be a good idea to look into definitely replacing those. I'm glad you brought that out.
Yeah, that
Definitely.
comes up and bites you.
It might not hurt to, if we don't already have such a thing, an inventory, and create a little replacement.
Like vehicles.
Exactly, so that they cyclically get budgeted for replacement.
I always try to attack these, and granted, I'm dealing with previous lives of dealing with town halls and staff sizes about this size, but we always kind of tackle it in terms of 2 or 3 computers a year, just like you would, with police cars, for example. Police cars. But this is a unique situation for me.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say one thing too, Mr. Gruisbeck. Miss Margaret Farrell is very happy with the top of the street improvements there. She has got her confidence back up with the town. So, thanks again, Mr. Roll.
We'll hope for Park Drive being the same result.
We've got some people working pretty close to that one too.
Okay, question for the board. Do we want to do our updates before we go to closed session, or we want to do closed session first?
Do the updates.
Do the updates first, okay. I'll go ahead and I'll start that process. With respect to EDC, I went to my first EDC board meeting as an ex officio member, and one of the things that the EDC is doing is they're putting together a PowerPoint presentation to facilitate outreach to like homeowners associations or the downtown merchants association, that sort of thing, other stakeholder groups within Chatham County. And it's a brief presentation that talks about economic development issues such as the super site over in Siler City. It's going to have a piece about Chatham Park and other things that are important on the EDC's to-do list. And they've asked me to participate in those, to be available to respond to questions about what we're doing with Chatham Park, and I've agreed to do that. The first such meeting is going to be Monday, February 3rd at the Chapel Ridge Homeowners Association. And they're now reaching out to other homeowners associations and organizations to see if they would like to hear the briefing, and I'll share with the board whenever I know when those appointments might be. Let's see, on February 6th, there's a special meeting of the Mayors and Chairs group, and I had asked if other board members or staff members wanted to attend. I think I've got 4 seats set aside now. So I recall Mr. Royal wanted to attend, and Commissioner Foley wanted to attend, and I thought there might be one. Did you indicate, Commissioner Turner, that you wanted to do that? Or?
I don't know if I indicated specifically. If there's room, I would like to. It's
Okay.
the 6th.
February 6th, yes. And Mr. Grusbeck, is that something you have time to do or are interested in doing? You're certainly not required to go, but if you want to.
Yeah, I have a thing at the winter conference that I'm supposed to participate in that morning, but I think I should be able to get back for it or meet you guys somewhere.
Okay, I'll coordinate that with you later.
Or just at 1:30.
Let me see. I'll sort that out and send everybody a reminder email. Okay. And that's all the updates I have. Commissioner Farrell.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Mr. Fuller.
I said my piece earlier about software.
Mr. Baldwin.
I did. I attended the Triangle J Council of Governments meeting on Wednesday, and they had and we actually had some interesting things going on, and there is one specific that I just want to mention, and that was an energy grant program where the town of, the city of Raleigh Police Department had retroverted some of their police cars to use propane instead of gas. So they're looking at that to see how that can be a cost-saving type situation. Also, I was just wondering if the Chief Crutchfield, and the town manager would be interested in applying for a grant that may be able to retrofit one of the older police cars to use ethanol or biodiesel. So if that's something you all will be interested in, of course we can apply because it won't cost the town anything. It's a grant program through the Triangle J.
It's interesting, I went to a presentation about a year ago from the Bonus Foundation, and they were talking about just that, of switching some of the public vehicles over to biodiesel. And I think considering that we have a biodiesel plant right here in Pittsboro, that seems like it's something that we should pursue.
If you all are interested, we can certainly get the grant application for you.
Free money is good, and it's always worth a look, so.
I'll be happy to look into it.
Okay. And then the only other question I have is about the fairground. And I was wondering if Mr. Petit or you would know if there was a sewer tap there. Because right now the fairground has a septic system. So if they could find that out and let me know that.
If there's a sewer, I'm sorry, sewer.
A sewer tap.
Okay.
So, and that's all I have.
I just want to say one thing about the fairgrounds. I understand that the fairgrounds would like to promote that space that's available, and it just seems like that's a good thing for all of us to know about, to make sure we can help get the word out about the fairground.
It is. That's what we're trying to do, have different events there every month or every so often. And before Christmas, there was a community type party there, which was quite successful. So we're trying to let everyone know the fairground can be used for that. And of course, there is a fee for security, because we actually asked Pittsboro Police Department or the Chatham County Sheriff's Department there for security.
That's for music festival.
Yes. And we have a website, so you can go onto the website and look at different things. So thank you all. So that's all that I have.
Mr. Turner?
Just one thing, I was hanging out at Town Lake Park this afternoon and noticed that in the entrance that's close to the bridge, closest to the bridge, I don't know if Mr. Horn's here, but if we could get a recycling bin there are about 4 nicely laid areas of beer cans that somebody has put there, and they're compacted.
Beer cans?
Yeah, like beer cans here, beer cans here. They put them neatly there, but I think if they had a recycling bin, they might put them in, and it would look a lot nicer, because it was beautiful there today. But
I think people fish there. Fishing and beer,
well, at least 5 people fished and neatly arranged their beer cans, but
Yeah, soccer goals.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like a simple thing to put a recycling bin there, so people don't have to walk to the other side of the park where there is one, where the soccer fields are, but it's.
Probably a lot of plastic bottles.
Yeah, that's it.
Good, thank you. Next item, I need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A6.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?